Hey, I asked myself this question: what would I tell the whole world if I could only tell her one thing? One thing to everybody. What would have the best positive impact? And I've thought about this for quite a while, but I made up my mind, and I actually think it would be so helpful if everybody would kind of make up their mind to this one kind of truth, I feel like. And it's that this belief that other people are other bad people are in your way, are actively trying to harm you, actively trying to hinder you, to like pull you back, to keep you on the ground, to not make you succeed, to harm you, to hurt you. That other people are actively doing this paranoia, this paranoid feeling of you need to be ready for this. And if someone is hurting, harming, whatever they probably do it actively, and then you need to kind of fight with them, and you have an enemy, an arch nemesis. It's a belief which is publicly kind of really, I don't know, taught to us by school, by all the movies we have. There's always an arch nemesis, which is kind of obsessed with the main character in a negative way, and just trying to actively for kind of no active personal gain, just trying to make their life worse. And in my opinion, that's just not true. It's not only not helping us as a society, I think it's making society worse. I think it's making our personal lives worse, because this paranoia is taking up so much. But it's also just not true, in my opinion. Because I don't know, when I was just smaller, and I had a person in school or something saying something mean to me, or taking something I wanted to take, or I don't know, cut in line or whatever. I don't know, I almost always suspect that they do this actively. And they just do this to make my life worse. There's no bigger picture to it. They just want to hurt me. They're just evil, bad humans, and they just want to make my life worse. And honestly, that's, I don't know, holding that fear, holding this kind of, negative picture towards other people, that they are dangerous, and that you're kind of on the lookout if they want to do you bad on something. I mean, there's probably some humans definitely who are messed up and just enjoy to see other people suffer. But most of the time, we also have this picture if we talk, for example, to a loved one, to a friend, if they said something which hurt us, that we kind of are already turning on this okay, they're the enemy, they wanted to they actively chose to hurt me. While through therapy and the life knowledge I sadly had to go through already, I know now that no, this is not true. As I already talked about in a different video as well, our reality is subjective, very subjective. It depends on how we're made, where our focus is, how we grew up in. It's dependent on so many different things. Already biologically, already probably maybe you can argue about if people have a soul or a character they are kind of born with or not. But if they are, this would also get into the picture. But on the other hand, also just how they grew up, how they were formed, how they learned life functions, and what their world belief is. And than just on the situation itself, like, because all these influences influence themselves as well. So you have just never, like, your picture of reality will never be like the objective picture of reality, and you will never grasp the reality of someone else to the full extent. I mean, we usually don't even grasp our reality like to the full extent for ourselves. Like, we have so many beliefs which are just like under the surface, and we kind of like sometimes even kind of act on it. Like, we feel something, but we don't know why we feel that, or like why we, for example, like feel violated from something like very tiny. And just through, like, I don't know, that's also part of therapy, through just like going in deep, like really thinking about it for like long, asking the right questions, having the proper knowledge to like know in which direction to go, we then find out more about this. But so yeah, reality is just extremely subjective, and the reality, the objective reality, is, in my opinion, like something we will never see. We will never be able to understand, because it's just like a summary of all our subjective realities. Having that said, it's, I don't know, like basically I would say like 99% of the people who like hurt me in my life, who have been in my way, who made my life worse in some regard, didn't choose to like hurt me, harm me, or make my life worse for the sake of it. They did this because of their own logic, because of their own reality. They never thought about my reality in that regard. It was just like kind of like a side effect, which was like sometimes unwanted, sometimes just kind of not regarded. And so there are definitely people who hurt you, who harm you, who stand in your way, who make your life worse, who make tasks in your life just like infinitely harder. But I don't think they like choose to actively do it. And I do believe that this thought of they choosing to actively do it is kind of leading to this problem that you don't like, that you make like fronts, that you say like, I'm here, you like chose to hurt me, so you are my enemy now, and I need to kind of like fight against you. While they were just kind of like minding their own business, they were doing their own things, and you were just kind of collateral, which isn't like, it's not making like your situation much better, because like you were still hurt like you have been before, but at least you're not hunted, you know what I mean? And it's a totally different way of communication if you see it that way. Because if you see it that way, you're not really, I don't know, like if you talk to a person and if you speak up about them hurting you or harming you, when people start in a conversation with like you, like with this belief that the other person did this out of like, I don't know, like just viciously, out of like evil thoughts, the other person will always, like almost always, revolt against that accusation, because they believe they are not an evil person. They would never do such a thing. And I would as well. Like, I don't know, I hurt, of course, like many people in my life, because that's just what happens. Like, boundaries you don't know get overcrossed, and just that's kind of like, I don't know, like it's humans living together. We're not the same. Like, it's bound to happen. And it's honestly not even like, it's not even the like an achievable goal, I think, to like never get hurt, or like find a group of people where you like never get hurt. So I don't like, for me personally, it's not my goal to never get hurt, but on how these situations are then being handled. Because it's okay if you didn't know something, if you haven't thought of it, if you were just like in your own reality and that wasn't part of the picture. It's like, it happens. It's not your fault. But then when it happens and I come to you and I tell you, hey, well, that hurt me, and please like consider that and kind of like see that it's not going to happen again, then it's a very different conversation to like, hey, you're an asshole, you're, well, blah, 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 you did this to hurt me, you're so evil, whatever. Because then the other person would be like, no, I'm not. Like, what the hell? Back off. Like, I'm not evil. Like, why do you, like, how could you think I'm evil? Like, okay, I hurt you, but, like, that doesn't mean me as a person is, like, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad human. So they are, like, way less cooperative than if you come to them and be like, hey, listen, like, see, like, this was your reality, but there's like a bubble you didn't see, you know, like the bubble where I was hurt, for example. And you know, please consider that next time, because otherwise I need to, you know, keep a distance or do like adjust my life so that you can't hurt my boundary in that sense anymore. And then the other person can choose if they, like, you know, consider you and consider the new information you just give them, and consider it enough to like not hurt you again, or if they don't want to, and then you will just do whatever you need to, you know, protect yourself. But yeah, it takes way more energy to feel hunted and to feel like other people are out to get you, because that's actually honestly like fear you feel, and you feel like there's like evil waiting around the corner, and like feeling offended by like many little things. So for example, there's this like one video where like an influencer is taking a video, and then just like some random pedestrians walk through the video, and the influencer is offended because like, why didn't they see I'm taking the video? Like, they obviously like don't respect me, they like just walk through my frame, they probably think I'm stupid or whatever, and wanted to like to be in my way to make my life harder. Now I have to do like the whole take again, like, you know, like that influencer is just kind of making this assumption that the other people did this actively, like they chose to do this to hurt him. And it's a way bigger emotional reaction, as if, for example, you would like see them walking to your through your frame and just being like, oh shit, they didn't see. Well, I should have maybe, I don't know, like told them beforehand, or I don't know, like next time go like into a like quieter corner or whatever, and I'm just gonna wait till they're through, because now it already happened, you know, it's not gonna change anything, and I'm gonna just keep on because they just didn't see it, you know. It's like there's no evil intent. There's no feeling of being like hunted. Like, yes, it's not good for you in that moment. It's like still now you need to cut it out, or like ask the question again. And the interview is maybe a little bit botched, but it was just an accident. It was just something that happened. Like many accidents happen in life. And it's a way less vicious emotional reaction you get to that. So it's way easier to handle, and it influences your day way less. Because if you always think like with every of these like little things, if the person in front of you in the car is like driving too slow, or like maybe cut you off a little bit, and you feel like, oh my god, they did this out of like they wanted to like yeah, I don't know, like cut me off. They wanted that I can't get through the light anymore, and that's why they drove so slow. You have like a way higher emotional reaction to it, because obviously now your head is like in this, oh my god, I need to fight, like I'm unsafe, like other people want to do me harm, I'm surrounded by enemies, I need to like fight to be safe, I feel unsafe, and this is such a like bad situation. Whereas if you're just thinking like, oh man, they didn't make it in time and now I have to wait. Sucks. Then it's just like, well, whatever, you know? And of course it like changes if you are with like a person who like actually like showed a very like obvious pattern of like just trying to piss you off. There are some people in life which just kind of obsess over others and literally want to pull them down. But at the same time, it's usually not actually about you. I mean, if someone obsesses so much over somebody else, it's probably because they have their own issues. And that's why they do it, because it's not really like healthy. Like your own kind of like biology and human thinking is focused on yourselves. Like we are social beings, but we're also kind of like a tiny bit of like egomaniacs, because like our priority is we survive first, kind of. So yeah, that's just kind of how it is. But so it doesn't really make sense if someone just focuses like all of their energy on ruining somebody else's life, because then they don't have enough energy like to prosper and build their own life. Which, yeah, as I said, like sometimes happens, but it's way, way less. And it really has kind of like always like a very obsessive undertone to it, where you like knew this person for like, okay, you don't actually need to know this person. I mean, it's also like, it's kind of like stalker behavior in a sense. So it's just like, well, mentally unhealthy. And yeah, that's like, we just gonna, put these people to the side. But the normal, regular people are not out to get you. And there might be a person who's kind of like making your life bad because their own life sucks and it's just random, kind of thrown at you. But that's also kind of like, it's not about you specifically. It's just that that person is like very bad at emotional regulation and can't handle their own emotions, and that's why they throw like an anger tantrum. And if you are then in the area, kind of, you are probably collateral. But also then it kind of like, it doesn't really help to be like, oh, that person did this actively or whatever. And be like, they're my enemy now. Just keep your distance. Just, be like, okay, red flag. Gonna keep them on like safety. Safe distance, yeah. And yeah, with like, especially with people where you have like a close connection to, as I said, it's like way better to like change the communication in that regard, that you see that they have like their own reality, and don't assume they want it bad. At the same time, this is not saying you need to let everything off. Like, some people harm your life, and honestly, I feel like that's also why it makes your life worse. Like, if you assume ill intent in everybody and just, I don't know, it kind of becomes like, if you, like, whether you cut someone off, whether you want someone out of your life, whether you look for distance to somebody because they are harming you or whatever, or making your life worse, it becomes a question of whether it's ill-intended or not. So, but that shouldn't be the question. Like, the question should be like whether you are okay, how the situation is currently, and how the situation has been, and how the situation probably will go on. And if you focus on this question of like, was it actually ill intent? Was this person actually out to get me? You are very, how do I say this? It's kind of easy to fall into a toxic relationship, because that's the thing with most toxic relationships, and I had to go through this myself. And it was literally the only thing kind of keeping me in that relationship, because I knew I wasn't fine with the situation right now. I knew I wasn't fine with how things have been. And I knew I probably wouldn't be fine with how things will go on. And still I stayed because I I spoke up about things, and it didn't seem like I wasn't convinced it's ill intent. I thought like, well, the other person like shows me love as well, so they do love me, but they hurt and harm me and make my life harder. And honestly, like now afterwards, I know that they also give me PTSD, but like in the beginning, it was just this question in my head where I was like, well, if the other person is actually evil and they want to harm me and whatever, they are a bad person and I don't want them in my life. But as long as they like love me, but like it's an accident, it's like a collateral that something happens to me, well, how can I fault them for this? And that's the difference, because like when you think about something like, well, blah 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 is happening and I assume the worst of this person and this person is actually like trying, like is out to get me, it makes your communication about a topic very hard, because you make up fronts, like you tell them they're the enemy, they like actively chose to hurt you, and then they will like always deny that probably. And you are gonna be like kind of like their enemy. While when you have this side of like, well, they live in their own reality and they hurt you because they didn't see it or consider it, or it was like still for their logic kind of the best solution and what they had to do. It's not like you don't need kind of to know whether the other person was actually ill-intended. Like you don't give the other person the chance in the confrontation to be like, no, what, like, how can you expect something so bad of me? Like, I would never, I love you, that was just an accident, whatever. And then it just happens again and again and again, because that would happen in my toxic relationships. It was just, I knew the other person loved me, and the other person always kind of told me, well, they're just a human and they will try to get better and they just, I don't know, can't do better, or it was just an accident or whatever. And then I stayed because I felt like, well, it's not ill-intended and it's just accidents, like they didn't want this to, so I can't like judge them for that. I can't like go now, can I? And the thing is, like, yes, you might not judge them for it, but it's still the reality you live in. Like, it's your reality. Like, that's what the situation is for you. That's what it turns out for you. So if you look from this perspective of like, well, that's their reality and I'm kind of like always falling off the grid in their reality, and that's my reality, and they always, like, I always end up hurt even if they don't want to. It's not about if they wanted to or not anymore, but it's about the result, kind of like, do you want to keep living in that reality where you end up being hurt, or do you actually look for the distance, look for whatever like solution you need to get your boundaries met, to get your boundaries respected. So it kind of gives you the opportunity to set boundaries, to get a healthy distance, to maybe cut someone off your life if you need to, or just, get the distance, as I said, without them having to do something for ill intent. So it kind of protects you even better than if you have this like paranoid vision of like, oh my God, everyone is out to get me. And at the same time, it's way easier for you to stay with people which are like actually like good people, because you can communicate about boundaries in a way they can answer to, and you can actually have like a discussion about it. And at the same time, like, you always have this choice of like, is this situation still like, do I still feel safe? Is this still good for me? Is this good enough for me? Do I need more distance? Or do I not need more distance because I talked to them now about this and actually it hasn't happened again? Because you talk about a situation directly without having to like look for signs of ill intent, but it's just the result. It's like, okay, I've been hurt for whatever reason, and now you're gonna bring it up, and then you can kind of like judge on the response of the other person if they will consider you now, or like if they will consider your situation or your feelings the next time, like how they will adjust to it, or like how they value what you said, kind of, and how they will try to, make it work with you. Because I mean, a lot of the time it's not really asking them to like change, but it's just asking them to do something like a tiny bit different, where most people don't even mind. Because I mean, changing my character for someone or like changing my core values for someone, that's obviously not gonna happen. But at the same time, if someone tells me I would need to change that for them to be able to be in my circle or like close to me, then at least we would know like, okay, it's not a fit, we're not gonna work out, but it's fine. It's like not anyone's fault, we're just not working out together. And it will not be like a very enemy kind of front lines war situation. So I don't know, I feel like that's what I would try to tell everybody, because I feel like that's such, I don't know, it's like a statement which you can't put like in one sentence, sadly, but I feel like it's I don't know, it has so much impact if you consider how it like changes every aspect of your life. Especially if you look into like studies on like how your like how happiness works, and how like which situations make people like less happy and more happy, and what is like the best kind of situation for example, a child to grow up, like how they feel the safest, what does a human need, what are the core needs of a human. And safety is like one of the main factors a human needs, like, and just like structure, like humans don't want to do mistakes, they don't really want to hurt others. So if you, I don't know, always kind of feel hunted, you obviously gonna feel very on edge the whole time, and that's not a very nice feeling, because you feel unsafe the whole time, and you're always in this fight, flight, or fright mode. While with the other situation, you are like, your body feels safe. You feel safe to talk about everything. You feel safe to make your decision and not having to answer the question if it was ill-intended or not first. Because also that question, why it held me so long in that relationship, is because you could never answer it. Because it's a question which 100% depends on the reality of the other person. As long as the other person is saying, no, it wasn't ill-intended, you either believe them or not. So there's not any like facts, anything you can kind of like base your reality on, where you know it's also like, it's not just what you think or like what the other person thinks, like it's, more substantial evidence kind of. So yeah, it's just way easier if you just base it on like, well, that was the situation, like, am I, like, I will talk to this other person about this, I will see how they react, I will see how they will answer to the request to kind of like adjust the situation. I would always consider to like, I mean, it's kind of easier to ask directly for like what you need from the other person for you to get your boundaries met, for you to feel safe. Then they also have something they can like directly kind of say no or yes to. At the same time, I feel like it's good to have this option to find a different solution. Because, I mean, your reality, you might not see a solution which would be possible for the other person. Also, you might not, like, you don't really know why the other person did that specifically, like, which feelings, which emotions, with which, like, logic was behind it. So maybe the other person has just done that, for example, because they thought you like it. So there's like a lot of different factors and a lot of things you don't really know from the side of the other person. So I feel like having like the possibility to have like an open conversation about something is very good. And the best part about it is that you speak up about things at the first or at the second time. And not only when you see this pattern building up and feeling like, well, that other person is like viciously trying out to like get me, especially because you have like with this other pattern of like this person is out to get me. A lot of people don't talk about stuff. A lot of people don't even go to the other person and are like, yeah, you did this to hurt me, because they know the other person will just say like, no, I didn't. Like, what the fuck you saying? But if they then still believe it, they just feel like, well, the other person is just lying. So like a lot of the time, people don't even talk about it, but just assume that's the reality, like the other person is actually trying to get them. And they will just do something in return, like go for revenge. And then you are in this like revenge cycle. And it's like, I mean, how do you get out? Like, you did bad to the other person and you actually kind of like actively chose to, whereas the other person probably just made a mistake. So honestly, in my opinion, like going for that like revenge arc is kind of like a bit more problematic, because the other person like crossing a boundary is usually just like it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's bound to happen with anyone. So then just taking revenge without like openly talking about it and bringing the issue up and giving the other person a chance to like, you know, adjust and tell their side of the story kind of, is a person I wouldn't want in my circle. I wouldn't want in my life, because I would feel unsafe around them. Because if I ever made a mistake and didn't notice, didn't read in the face of the other person that like there's something up, then I need to watch out for revenge. And I might not even know that I ever offended the other person because they masked it so good. So I don't know. It kind of makes you the offender in a way as well, because you just assume reality for the other person and don't give them a chance. So yeah, and just so I said, like communication is extremely hard with that perspective. So the perspective of just being like, well, that other person has a logic, and especially if you're like, I don't know, if you love that other person, like I see that also a lot in like relationships and love relationships or like friendships, where like they kind of like they like the other person, like the other person was like a good human so far, and then something happens and now the other person is a bad human. Like that doesn't really make sense. Like, do you have any reason to believe the other person just changed like that? Because probably the other person was a good human, because they are a good human, and then just didn't see the picture, like didn't see you in the picture, didn't see how it would influence you. So they still believe they're a good human, they didn't even recognize. And they still are a good human. So if you then just tell them like, hey, you know, that kind of hurt me and I would appreciate if you like, you know, consider me next time, and see how they react, is probably the best way to go about it and not make front lines. I also gotta say like a short disclaimer to it, because a lot of humans I notice are like very like they how do I say this? They don't want to make mistakes at all, especially with their loved ones. So you will kind of get into the situation as well that the other person, like even when you kind of tell them nicely that they like hurt you in that regard, or like, so it's like easier to say like not like you hurt me, but to formulate it in like a very like this just happened kind of, there's no like fault, like you didn't hurt me but that hurt me, like that behavior, that outcome, that result. So I want like, let's please like together, like let's work together as a team to change that result, please. And then the other person can like still deny that, and then you know like, okay, they're not really like interested in like holding up your boundary in that regard, and then you need to care for yourself. But like formulating it in like a very non-frontational way is the absolutely best version. But that usually comes kind of like with the wisdom, or like with the mental mindset of being like, well, that other person didn't want to hurt me. They just like kind of, it just happened because his, her, or whoever's reality wasn't involving this side of the picture. Yeah. But it's definitely something kind of which needs adjusting and adjusting time. And I personally still have that. And let me tell you, like with relationships you had for a long time already, and you had this like old I don't know, like old way of like just communicating and how the relationship kind of works, how you interact with each other, and then you try to change it up. It's probably still has like some old wounds where you yourself just kind of instantly get emotional and then go into this way. So don't expect like a whole change from you. Just try to be like as open about it as possible. Maybe just kind of tell the other person, or like at least that's what I tried. I tried to tell the other person that I noticed this pattern in our communication and it's not working out for me. It's not something I desire. I desire a pattern which is like way more harmonious and feels more safe for me, because I feel very unsafe in that other pattern and very on edge, and I don't like that feeling. And if they want to kind of like, if they are into like changing that pattern, and then kind of trying to work on it together and see if that works. And if you don't have a person where they like want to, or like where they understand it enough to work with you together on it, then yeah, well, it's definitely a situation where you have to be like the good idol type. But at the same time, it's like very okay to just, you know, see the situation you're in and see if that's enough for you, and then draw the lines and just change how things work in that relationship and see how the other person reacts to that. Just like ask, or like tell the other person, well, that hurt me, and I need you to be like more considerate when you say something like this, because this is like a very sensitive topic for me, or whatever. And see how they react, and then it's gonna get interesting real fast. But yeah, so that's just something which is kind of like very close to my heart, this topic. It's not easy, definitely not. It's especially not easy with like topics which are, I don't know, which are already so wound from like old wounds. So yeah, it definitely needs time to adjust. But I really strive to get into this mindset properly, kind of fully, because I don't know, it's just a way. Like, I already have moments where I'm like fully in that mindset. So it kind of like, once you made up your mind to that mindset, and you really like, you keep it in your mind, because that's also a thing. Like, you kind of like, I sometimes notice that when I'm with like new people and I made up my mind before, it's kind of like easy to stick to this new mindset, because it's like all new relationships. You don't have to like cross out like older paths or like close older paths and make new ones, but you just go new ones. So it's like way easier to go them. But when you are around like very many people, where you have these like old kind of already rolling relationships with, then it's like very, very easy to fall into this old pattern. And after being with these people, it's usually necessary, at least for me, it has really helped to kind of remind me of this mindset again, like kind of actively, mindfully, like thinking about this again and really putting it into my heart again and putting it out there. And yeah, so that's what I recommend too, because you definitely way easier lose sight of it if you are with people where you have this just old interaction paths and very very often, I don't know how you say this, like very stable, not stable. I can't find the words, but basically that you already have like that relationship and the interaction is like always kind of linking into each other, and you already have this dynamic, that's the word I was looking for, like this, you build up this toxic dynamic, and it's like so far in your brain, it's like so deep down that it's so hard to switch. And usually there's like these old wounds, and then it's so hard to like stay out of the emotional zone and really be like, no, maybe the other person didn't want this, huh? When you think like, man, I talked about this so often already and they still don't listen, blah blah blah. But yeah, with the new way, and that's the other thing I sometimes forgot. It's not only that you talk about something and that you speak up about something from the perspective of like maybe the other person, like with the core assumption the other person didn't want this, the other person is still like, they have a logic which works, they are a good human, and that was just something they didn't know, so now I will tell them, and then they will obviously change their behavior because they don't want to hurt me. But it's also the thing that the other person doesn't need to do that. The other person can like politely say like, well, that's not really possible for me. That kind of, I don't know, is my core or whatever. I don't want to adjust in that regard. And then you are on your own, and that's okay. Like, the other person doesn't need to follow your boundaries. But at the same time, you choose if you still spend time with the other person. You choose how you then like kind of protect yourself. Like, how do you then still get your boundaries met? And if it's boundaries which, when the other person doesn't listen to it, will always be overstepped in like any type of interaction, then yeah, it might be the best decision to then say the other person the stakes which are kind of bound to her saying like, well, I can't adjust in that regard, and be like, well, then I can't keep up this contact. Sorry. And then the other person can like quickly think about it again. Maybe then it's worth, like, if that's on the table, maybe then I do want to change. And if they don't, then yeah, you do you. Like, take the distance you need. Like, do whatever you need to get your boundaries met. Yeah. So that was not short. That was a good long old episode of Brain Buzz again. Also the first one in English again. Since I did a few in German before. But I think I will continue with English because the translation from English to German, like the auto translation from YouTube, is like way better. And also, like, a lot of you German folks know English, so you're gonna be fine. And yeah. But I really believe it's so important, this topic. Because, yeah, I don't know. It's way harder if you believe that, especially with loved ones, that a loved one wants to hurt you and is viciously hurting you, actively choosing to, than being like, well, happens, but then talking about it. And just talking about the result, about the situation not occurring again. And not talking about whether they wanted to or not. And them being able to just forever lie in your face and tell you, no, I didn't want this. I could never. I love you. I'm just a human. Come on. It wasn't that bad, was it? Because then you're very easy to be gaslit. I'm sorry, but that's just how it was for me. Because I was just trying to get like a factual answer to if they wanted to do this, if they are viciously trying to hurt me or not. But at the end, I found out it doesn't matter. It just matters the situation. Are you fine with the situation? Are you okay with how it is right now? Is this the life you want? Is this the relationship you want? Is it okay that that boundary, that need, whatever, is not met? Or is it not? And if it's not okay, then work with the other person, or like give the other person a chance to work with you on something better. And if it's still not being met, then choose consequences and protect yourself. Because that's fair. That's not on the other person. It's not mean. That's just a natural consequence. And that's okay. A lot of people can't meet the boundaries or needs of other people. We are all different. We are so different. Sometimes even culturally so different that it's extremely hard to meet these needs. And that's okay. So it's not mean, it's not a burden to ask for your boundaries being met. But don't make it to a question if the other person is mean or not, or evil or not. Because it's not evil to be different. And if the other person, like if you talked about it, the other person doesn't want to value your boundaries or help you in that regard, and then you tell them the consequences and you look for the distance, but for whatever reason they literally like come after you then, after you told them like, no, I need that distance. I need us to not talk about these topics again, and I will not talk about these topics again. And they are always trying to like push you. Then it's a new thing. You talk about it again. If the other person then doesn't value it again, take the next steps you need to. Okay? It's important. Boundaries are very important. And it's very important to be able to talk about them and communicate about them openly. It's very important to communicate about them, or like be able to communicate about them in like a safe kind of situation and feeling safe about it. So, I don't know. Do what you need to make your life right now safe for you. Because, I don't know, if you don't give the other person the power of being able to just lie to your face and say like, no, I didn't do this viciously. Or like if you don't give the other person the power of being like, yeah, of course they did this for like to hurt me. But if you just acknowledge like, okay, we're all different humans and you do you and I do me. And we all just do what's best for us. But like not, it's not in a like weird, I will step over everybody others' boundaries and I will just, get rich quick on the necks of other workers, but just in a way of like, I do what I need to like feel safe in the relationships I have, feel safe socially. That's incredibly important to be a good human. Because if you always feel on edge, if you always feel hunted, you will hurt others. Definitely, for sure. Just as defense mechanism. So, don't push yourself into a corner. And it's sadly, like, it's definitely a philosophy which is taught to us by so many people. And it's reinforced kind of like every day in our culture. And, well, it's just making society worse, like also the sense of society. Because it's making us enemies, and we are not enemies. Most people don't even want to be your enemies. Most people you probably think they are your enemies don't even know you. So, yeah, be safe out there. And thank you for another episode. I hope it was helpful. I hope it was nice to listen to. And if you watched this far, thank you so much. It was a long one, I know, like always. I just yap. I yap the whole time. I can't shut up about these topics. They're just so interesting. And I just really want you to like get it as best as you can to my extent. So I know I like repeat a lot of things, or like I try different metaphors and stuff and different kind of like explaining techniques, but I feel like it's very important to really get the point across and to narrow down the picture of what I actually mean to you, so we understand us the best as possible. So, yeah. Also, it's great if you just do some other things along the way, because then you, like, it doesn't matter if you don't listen to it for like 1 minute. That's gonna be fine. So, yeah. Thank you so much, and see you in the next episode. Have a great day. Have a wonderful day, and bye.